My peoples, welcome to Rants and Randomness. I'm Luvvie Ajayi, your wacky wordsmith and host, and this is my podcast where I am talking about the things I'm loving, things I'm side-eyeing, and having great conversation with really interesting people. I'm here at Chicago Recording Company, bringing y'all the radio voices always, and on this episode, my feel-good is the love fest that my friends threw me. I'm ranting about people who don't vote on purpose and spotlighting a company I'm really loving called Mess in a Bottle. My guest is the incredible Jemele Hill. So this is going to be a really good show. Let's jump into it. All right, so I'm feeling really good about the Love Fest. What is the Love Fest? It is a party that my friends decided to surprise me and throw me a couple of weeks ago. It was awesome because they know, it's been a kind of rough couple of months, so they decided on a random Saturday to trick me, get me out the house, and when I walked back in, they were all waiting and yelled, surprise. There was food, there was drinks, there was red velvet cake, which is my favorite. And then they wrote notes for me to read for when I need to be filled up even more. My friends are really important to me. I even had a Squad Goals bonus episode. Go listen to that if you haven't yet, where I talked about the importance of my day ones. And day ones are the people who knew you before any of the glow up, who you knew before you had any of your shit together, who were with you when you didn't know how to dress, and they know where all the bodies are buried. These are the people who I've known since high school and college. Some of them I've known since I was 9. A lot of my friends I've been friends with for 20 years or 15 years. And they were all in the build. Well, not all of them, but a bulk of them were there. And these people are important to have around you because they're the ones who reflect your true version of yourself back to you. They're the ones who don't care about the awards, and they knew you before any of it, so it's not even about any of the accolades. The Love Fest was so dope, y'all. They had my favorite foods because, jollof rice was in the building. Had my favorite drinks, and we just spent 3-4 hours just having a good time. It was so special. I felt all the love because they didn't have to do it. 1, 2, it wasn't my birthday. And 3, how many times do people pause to really just be like, we just want to celebrate you? I was like in my feelings. There's picture proof of all this stuff. And I think it's also really good to talk about this type of thing because we don't often talk about friendship in this way, the friendship that feels selfless. So the Love Fest was just amazing. And I still haven't read any of the notes. I actually have it on my nightstand. And it's basically my, in case of emergency, break these things open and read them and feel good. Love is definitely a verb, and they showed me that. And my love language is words of affirmation. So having people who love up on me and wrote it down and spent the time and the money because somebody had to order all these drinks, it meant the world. My cup basically runneth over with feels. So thank you to my squad. Y'all are the best. I have the best village, and I hope I can continue to be worthy of such amazing people. So shout out to y'all. I love y'all so much. We go together so tough. I love you. Oh, man. In the not-so-feel-good section is my rant, y'all. Listen, here's the thing. All right, we are in some dire times. I think the country, the United States, is really in a crossroads where, that kind of started not in 2016, but it hit a head in 2016 when we voted Marmalade Mussolini in as president. But this upcoming midterm elections is critical. And it feels critical in a way that a lot of elections haven't felt as critical. It just feels like we are in a moment where we either sink or swim. And this is why I am ranting about people who do not vote. I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but we took a lot of things for granted that we realized in November 2016 that we should not have taken for granted. We assumed that people were better than they were. We assumed that people would say no to a candidate who ran on a platform of prejudice and hate and ignorance. But, yes, sure, technically most of the country voted for Hillary. Most of the people who voted did vote for Hillary. I think 3 million more people voted for Hillary than Donald Trump. But here's the thing. The guy who won is Donald Trump. Now, the Republicans ended up running all branches of the government, and now Donald Trump is also chosen 2 Supreme Court justices. What we do not have time for is any other losses. We do not need the Republicans to have any more power. We need to take some of that power back, those of us who are progressives, Democrats. And I am not saying the Democrats are a perfect party, because sometimes they piss me off. Actually, often they piss me off. However, there is such a thing as lesser of two evils. And in this November, this midterms election, it is so critical that we get out to vote. This is why it makes me really upset that some people decide not to vote on purpose. It drives me nuts. I do not understand how you can be a citizen of a country and refuse to exercise this power. Now, let me be clear. What I'm speaking about here are those of us who are able-bodied, we're documented, we have the easy means to get to a polling place, we have IDs that match the genders that we claim, we're not so old that walking and seeing our problems, we aren't disenfranchised because of a felony on our record. Those of us who are like able-bodied, all of those, we need to make sure that we're voting so those who aren't able-bodied, those who aren't documented, those who are old, those who are trans and their IDs still don't match their actual claimed genders, we need to make sure they're okay. So it is our jobs. Those of us who have no type of obstacles in the way, we need to make sure we are voting, okay? It's not that, it's going to change everything overnight. Here's the thing. Voting is not the only tool that we have at our disposal, but it is one of the more powerful ones, and we have to use it. So for me, I am here. I literally can walk up to a polling place at any time because early voting has begun. For somebody like me to decide not to vote feels like a slap in the face to what democracy is. It feels like a slap in the face for those who died for us to have the rights to vote, because a century ago, most of us could not even vote. Now that we have the right, some of us are choosing to sit it out because we're so disillusioned by the system that we're like, oh, whatever, it's already all been decided. What's voting gonna do? Listen, I am not saying when you cast your vote, all of a sudden, things flip for the better. But what I'm saying is you doing the opposite. You sitting at home actually does hurt us. You voting does not really hurt us, as in if you're voting correctly, that is. Like, don't vote for the people who don't see us as full human beings, who don't recognize people's rights to claim who they say they are or love who they want to love. Vote correctly. But when you are sitting at home and you have sense and you're just sitting at home because you're so disillusioned that you don't think your vote matters, you are actually hurting us. Voting is one of the most powerful tools that we have, and we have to exercise it. We vote, and then we do the other things to support that so we can get the policies in place, so we can make sure that we have the world that we want to live in. What happens when we don't vote? I think they said like 29% of people who were eligible to vote in 2016 did not. Imagine if even 5% of those people voted for Hillary or didn't vote for Trump. We would be in a different place. We would not have the most conservative Supreme Court that we've had in like a generation right now. It's just so, elections have consequences, y'all. Like, I know I'm not going to be, I can't force you to vote or everything, but elections have consequences. We cannot sit these out. We just can't, especially when we have no excuse to at this point. I get it. We are so woke sometimes that we're like, well, this candidate is still believing this one thing. I think of voting as harm reduction. It is not saying any one person can save us. It is not saying they're perfect candidates. It is not even saying the Democrats know the answer. However, the facts are Republicans are currently essentially running a white nationalist agenda. And if we can keep less of them in power, if we can vote more of them out of power, we're doing harm reduction. So at the very minimum, us voting for Democrats this November is harm reduction. And there's some really cool Democrats who are progressive who are running for office who I hope people support if they're in their state. And that's like Stacey Abrams in Georgia. She's running for governor of Georgia. Andrew Gillum in Florida. We need to see more black and brown people in power. And we need to use that vote. And that's why they're actually trying to do all this voter suppression. If our vote was not important, they would not try to keep us away from the polls as much as they do. I mean, in Georgia, Brian Kemp, who's running against Stacey Abrams, is the attorney general. He also happens to be managing the rolls. And they said something like 53,000 people have been purged from the rolls. Listen. They're trying very hard to keep us from the polls. It is because when we speak up, when we insist on being heard in this way, we get the people who represent us in place. They don't want us to have the people who represent us in place. So we need to make sure that we do everything we can to vote those people who represent us into place. We have to show up and vote on November 6th. But the cool thing is you can early vote if you're somehow going to be out of town, if that day is not convenient. If you just want to make sure you get this out of the way, go early vote. Harris County in Houston saw record numbers of early voting turnouts on October 22nd. So people are really understanding what is at stake here, I think. But in case you are on the edge and you're one of those people who are like, I don't know if I'm going to vote, listen. I need you to volunteer your vote as tribute. Just vote for the Democrats. Like, do some research, find out what people's stances are. But the Republicans cannot continue to control every arm of government. We will find ourselves back in 1824 very quickly. And if that is exaggerating, I don't even think it's exaggerating, though. I don't think it's exaggerating because they want to remove rights. Like, they want to remove There was one about trans people. They want to remove actually recognizing transgender people and just saying that gender is just male and just female. So even things like that, we need to make sure those people who believe that do not end up getting any more power. Michelle Obama is really letting everybody know right now how important it is to vote. And she posted a video on Instagram from, I think, a speaking engagement that she did when she said, when you don't vote, what you're doing is giving someone power over your own life. Voting is the only way to ensure that your concerns matter. I don't think it's the only way, but I think it's a really major way. So those of you who are not voting, first of all, we're not cool. Because if you sit here and actually brag about you not voting and you have the ability to and the ID and the status, okay, we have a problem. 2, to opt out of this important piece of a democracy is to kind of laugh in the face of those who came before you. And 3, if things go wrong and you're one of the people who didn't vote, I want to punch you in the face. Yeah, I said it. Yes, I did. See, God ain't done working with me yet. I'm gonna work on it. But in the meantime, I hope everybody shows out, votes. For those of you who get turned around, please look up provisional ballots. We need to make our voice be heard because this is urgent. This is now. And what we do November 6th has major consequences. So go vote. If you're somebody who doesn't vote, remember this. We not cool. All right. Bye. Yo, so this week I am shouting out and spotlighting Mess in a Bottle. Mess in a Bottle is a t-shirt company that puts meaningful messages on their shirts that come in a reusable bottle. And it was created in 2016 by Kalila Wright, who left her 6-figure job as an architect to pursue this passion. I ended up meeting Kalila at some conference. I cannot remember which one. I think it was Afrotech 2016. And she came up to me, introduced herself, gave me a shirt, was like, I'd love for you, wear it. And I was like, oh, cute. I'll totally wear it. And she kept in touch with me after. And I just was paying attention to her hustle. Like, she hit me up, was like, what conferences do I need to be? I want to make sure I get to have my products in front of people who would rock it in a really dope way. And her work ethic, her correctness made me really want to see her grow and shine. And since then, her products have been everywhere, everywhere. Serena Williams was rocking her Queen Army Fatigue jacket in Paris. Lena Waithe wore her Keep Creating Dope Shit Until Someone Notices t-shirt. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Amsterdam, and I ended up wearing one of her Grill bomber jackets. Khalilah works so hard, and she is transparent about her journey as an entrepreneur. She talks about the struggles behind trying to build this business from scratch. I've seen her grow from, doing it randomly in her house to now having office space for the company. I'm a huge fan of people who decide to pursue their dreams and put the work behind it. She wasn't just the person who was like, oh, I'm going to do this thing. No, she committed to it, and she has grinded her way to some dope places. She's been on, her stuff has been on red carpets now, and Khalilah is just somebody who's really nice, super sweet, focused. So as Mess in the Bottle does better and better and gets bigger and bigger, all I can do is cheer her on. Her products are great quality. I usually have on some type of Mess in the Bottle t-shirt at least once a week, couple of times a week, and I shout her out because I need more people to know about dope folks like her who are actively doing what they say they want to do, who are actively putting some serious strategy behind what they're doing, and she's constantly looking on how to be better. She's done a funding campaign with I Fund Women that went really well. She's pitched herself at different pitch contests. She's been at Essence Fest vending. And I just want more people to know about Mess in a Bottle. It's on Instagram. You can see the company's products on Instagram. It's at Mess in a Bottle is a username. And the website is messinabottle.com. You can order t-shirts with these really, really cool sayings on it. And one thing that she does that impresses me is she'll take pop culture moments and within an hour of it happening, have a t-shirt that corresponds to it. She doesn't stop, okay? She doesn't stop. I want her to kind of get some work-life balance. Hey, girl. But I just love how passionate she is about this work. And I am a fan of the brand, so I wanted to spotlight the goodness that she's creating. Be sure to go order a t-shirt, messinabottle.com. Pick one of the really cool sayings and support this Black businesswoman who I am sure one day will have $1 billion company. So shout out to Khalilah and Mess in the Bottle. I am shouting out my fans, people who are listening to this podcast. Y'all keep on sending these reviews, and I'm going to keep reading them. Vivian Giselle _arm on IG said, I love your podcast. Inspirational and always find new people to research and follow. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Iron Butterfly on IG said, I enjoy this podcast so much. I often listen to you when I'm on the road. It's great food for thought, new perspective, and just a lot of self-love. I am a new follower, but truly enjoying. Thank you. Glad you found us. Minneapolis Advice Givers on IG says, there's nothing cooler than some truly engaging content. Amazing job. Thank you. And then Reggae Latte said, great episodes. Love the Kev on Stage interview. He dropped gems. He did. Kev is hysterical. So that episode was really fun. If y'all haven't checked that out, that was, I think, episode 17? Either way, go look up the one with Kev on Stage. It's good. This week's episode of Rants and Randomness is brought to you by Third Love. Third Love offers bras designed for the modern woman. And with Third Love, you can skip the trip, take the online Fit Finder quiz to find the perfect fit for your breast size and shape. Yup, shape matters. Order and try it on at home. The quiz is actually pretty fun and super fast. Plus, with their fit guarantee, returns and exchanges are free and easy. I tried the bras and I love it. It's super comfortable. The label is tagless, so nothing's scratching you. The straps don't slip, and the bras have lightweight, super thin memory foam cups. They're really comfortable, y'all. And we be ready to take them off at the end of every day. So the more comfortable they are, the better. Third Love knows there's a perfect bra for everyone. So right now, they are offering my listeners 15% off their first order. So you go to thirdlove.com/rants and you find your perfect fitting bra and you get 15% off your first purchase. So that is thirdlove.com/rants for 15% off. Holler at it. Jemele.
What up, homie?
What's going on, man?
Nothing much. Just out here living, trying each day my goal is just not to slap the shit out of somebody. So
Yeah.
that's all.
That's a
Only
great
principle I live by.
That is a great goal. All right, Rant fam, I am super excited to have my friend Jemele on this right now. Yes, welcome to the show, Jemele.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm a fan of you, a fan of this podcast, because every time I listen to it, I feel as if y'all just gathered my whole life on my edges. So I'm hoping to add and contribute and give the people some takeaways, as many as I receive every time I listen.
Oh, listen, honestly, look, Jamaican Black Castor Oil stock be going up after some episodes because my guests be dropping gems.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, kind of, as you go through life, the type of wisdom, I should say, that you appreciate at different points in your life. I mean, the things I needed to hear 15, 20 years ago versus what I need to hear now, it's just totally different. I mean, to me, so much of my life and existence is about trying to be patient, and because as you get older, you just run out of what.
Yes.
And so I try to replenish them, but I don't really know where to get them from.
You know what? My dams
so I'm just
be
trying
fresh.
to survive it.
I be fresh out of dams sometimes. I'm like, they on back order. I ain't even got it.
I know, and some of, I mean, a lot of it is good, because I think as you get older, or at least more experienced, it's not necessarily an age thing, because as they often say, there's nothing. Young fools become old fools. And so I think it just comes with experience and just growing more confident in who you are. That's what kind of leads you to be fresh out.
Oh, see, she already dropping them. I'm going to give the people your bio so they understand the epicness that is on this show. Jemele Hill is a staff writer for The Atlantic, where she explores the intersection of race, culture, gender, politics, and sports. The award-winning sports journalist and commentator recently left ESPN, where she spent 12 years in a variety of roles, including senior correspondent and columnist for ESPN's The Undefeated. Prior to joining The Undefeated, Hill co-anchored SportsCenter with her longtime friend and colleague, Michael Smith. As you may remember, last year, she gained the attention of the White House when she tweeted that President Donald Trump is a white supremacist. She ain't lying. 1 month after deadly violence in Charlottesville, Virginia. In August 2018, the National Association of Black Journalists awarded Hill with Journalist of the Year award. Jemele is also co-founder of the Lodge Freeway Media production company she formed last year with her best friend from college, Kelly Carter. A native of Detroit, Hill is a proud Michigan State alum. Yes. Okay, so I start every interview by asking people, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Well, I actually wanted to be what I am now. And I was one of those very unique people who knew from an early age what they wanted to do. I always wanted to be a journalist. I love reading, because I think that's kind of the core point of where you start as a journalist. If you don't have, I would say this for any profession, but especially it's true in journalism, because you're forced to cover so many different things, and you're in so many different situations, that you really have to have a grasp of a lot of things. And so I was always insatiably curious. So I love reading. I spend a lot of time in the library, but I also love to write and create and craft stories. And the thing that appealed to me about journalism is that the search and pursuit of truth, and that truth isn't always pretty.
Yep.
A lot of times it's things that you would prefer not to hear, but that doesn't mean you stop pursuing it anyway. I mean, it's hard to remember this, especially in today's media culture, given everything that we have going on politically and socially. But the whole point of a free press is to disrupt and to hold people accountable. And all of that appealed to me, even though I went into sports. There's a certain kind of disruption that definitely happened there. And so anyway, long story short, I wrote for my high school newspaper. I used to write short stories and poems as a kid, and went to college, majored in journalism, had a bunch of internships. And before I even got to ESPN, I had a print career in newspapers for about a decade, covering college football, college basketball, a bunch of different things. And at ESPN is where I sort of doubled down and got into commentary, which eventually led to television, which, of course, all led to where I am right now.
So, were you an athlete when you were younger?
I was. I was a neighborhood tomboy, and so a lot of times when people ask me, especially in sports, that you spend a lot of time in the company of men, either male colleagues, certainly male athletes. And so people would often marvel at my level of confidence and being in the company of men in a male-dominated field. And a lot of that, I think, came from the fact that I was, again, the neighborhood tomboy. And if you're, for all the tomboys out there, when you're in that position, you got to be able to hold your own. Because if guys think that you're better at them than something, especially in sports, where they just think by nature of genitalia they're just supposed to be better than you, they will try you. And so I had to, learn early on, how to stand my ground and how to be confident and comfortable and how to give as good as I got. And so, I played football on the block and all kinds of sports. And then the sport I gravitated to the most was fast pitch softball, because baseball was my first love growing up. And so I played in high school, and I actually played since I was like 10 years old. Started off with slow pitch, got the fast pitch, played traveling teams. And, I knew, although I was pretty decent in high school and got some offers from small colleges, I also got an academic scholarship to Michigan State, and I wanted to pursue journalism. So, I knew my dream of playing at a higher level was going to end in high school. And, because the options that they have now were not available then. Not that, I don't know if I would have chosen that path, but yeah, I've always loved playing sports and watching sports because, it's not just a thrill of competition, and I am a competitive person, but it's also, sports is one of the few places in our society where there's some semblance of a meritocracy. Everything is not perfect, but there is some semblance of that. Either you can play or you can't, and that's what I've always loved about sports.
All right, so I love hearing about tomboy. I was a tomboy too. I was one of those rough and tumble ones. I have the scars on my knees to prove it. When you told your parents you wanted to be a journalist, how was that? And how old were you when you were like, I'm gonna be a journalist?
Well, I think I was pretty much probably middle school when I figured out that this was what I wanted to do. I didn't know how that would actually happen, because other than reading the newspapers, I knew journalists wrote for newspapers, and I read newspapers a lot, growing up as a kid, because I'm old enough to remember when the only way you could follow your sports teams really was by reading the newspaper. And I don't know if I ever recall sitting down with my mom and saying so I'm going to be a journalist. She knew I was doing these things in journalism because I was a part of a high school apprenticeship program that took young people from the area and taught them about journalism. And I had done a journalism camp, and she knew I was studying journalism, but I don't think she knew exactly what that looked like or what that meant. So, her attitude was always, I don't care if you're a clown, just be the best clown that you can. So yeah, I think it wasn't until I started to progress a little bit more in my career that my mother had a firmer understanding of what it is I was trying to do.
And growing up being the girl who's usually among boys, how did you develop this voice? Because you are one of the truth tellers out here. So what were you like at 12, at 13 when you were constantly around? How did you learn to own your own?
Well, I guess like a lot of, Black women raised by other Black women, the original truth teller is your mama.
Facts, facts.
So, you know what I mean? That's the one who, because if don't nobody else tell you the truth, a Black mama will tell you the truth. So,
all the time.
All the time, between her and my grandmother and my great aunt, who were major influences on my life, seeing them always stand up for themselves, seeing how they battled in their own lives, gave me some resiliency. Being from Detroit, that also was a major part of it. And, just growing up in the inner city. So it was sort of through those three worlds that I was able to kind of form perspective and, had this attitude that basically I wasn't going to, back down. And I think there's a difference between kind of when you learn and know how tell the truth and to be honest with people and growing into your truth. And the growing into my truth part just was over time. And that's really just growing into a sense of who you are and what you stand for. I mean, I knew when I left for college, when I left for Michigan State, there were certain things that I absolutely stood for, but those things had to be tested and expanded through experience. And so as I, lived life and lived in different cities and began to progress as a both personally and professionally, that's when I knew the difference between, living in your truth, growing in your truth, and telling the truth. And so it just kind of happens to me in like sort of 3 different cycles.
So for sports journalism, this is a different type of truth because you're constantly in a field where men are challenging you. Do you remember your first position in sports journalism?
Well, let's see. My first sports internship was I was at the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and so I lived in Cleveland for a few months. But I guess even rewinding it a little, I mean, the first time I started to write about sports was in high school when I worked on my high school newspaper. And, I mean, you're definitely right in the sense of that as a woman, you have to get accustomed to, and especially as a Black woman, you have to frankly get accustomed to the fact that people are looking to use your gender and your race and a combination of both as a reason to undermine your credibility.
Right.
And, when I did SportsCenter, and even before Mike and I were on SportsCenter, and when we were doing our other show, His and Hers, before we made the transition to SportsCenter, I mean, a daily part of the existence is the fact that if Mike, flubbed a statistic or flubbed a name, they would just call him, an idiot or wouldn't even notice or just accept the fact that it was a mistake. If I did it, made any mistakes, or even just had a strong opinion that was the opposite of what a lot of men were saying, then I became the indictment and the reason why women don't belong in sports. And even though there were plenty of men in our field that have never played professional sports, never even played sports, period.
Right.
I constantly have to hear that I can't possibly understand football because I never played it. Because if that were the litmus test for understanding any sport, who would be watching it? I mean, there are plenty of fat dudes that sit on their couch, scratching themselves who have never played.
Correct.
And feel like they're experts and will, spout off about things they don't know. And so that's always that unfortunately going to be a part of what you kind of have to put up with in this business if you're a woman. And it's not just, what when people constantly testing your knowledge level, asking you questions they definitely wouldn't ask a dude. But it's also just the scrutiny that you're under.
Yeah.
Like if it's a bunch of assistant coaches that are going out, to grab a drink or going out to dinner, and and there's a male reporter there, nobody thinks anything of it. But if it's me, it's okay. Who's she sleeping with, or are they just doing this because she's pretty, or then you have to worry about that dynamic. Or even just what you're wearing. I mean, there were so many days I did television, and we know Twitter, on many days, the stupid people win on Twitter.
Oh, my gosh.
But there were days where, guys are critiquing my makeup and my clothes, and I'm like, Bruh. What do you know about makeup?
You're like, face your front, my dude. Meanwhile, he probably be sitting somewhere with all types of, like, tattered drawers on, but they want to come for you.
And, I mean, what I always wanted to say to them is, like, don't act like you wouldn't ask me for my number if you saw me in public. So.
Listen, come on. Saw you in public wearing your sweatpants, okay, and your J's.
Thank you. Exactly. I'm just like, so it's just, and I feel so bad for younger female journalists because a lot of them see the scrutiny that myself and other women in my position receive, and the negative feedback on Twitter, and just the harassment, and just people who don't know how to mind their business. And they get so discouraged by this because they don't want to feel like they're under attack every day. And
Absolutely.
It pains me to tell them that they have to condition themselves to take this because that gives way too much power to the people who shouldn't say it to begin with. But unfortunately, that's the only message that I have at this point because, just the reality of what they're going to face.
But how have you conditioned yourself for this? What is your armor?
Well, luckily, having a strong sense of who you are, and I think is a big part of it, because when you know who you are, you tend to care very less, or you tend to not care at all about what people say about you. And, as I often used to say on social media, when people would come at me, it's just like, check still cash the same, whether you like me or not.
Hey,
still cash the same.
Come on.
So there's that part of it. And then I think I am fortunate in the sense that, like, I'm just a technology immigrant. Like, a lot of these kids now and younger people, now anybody younger than me, I just call it kids, but they have grown up.
You know what? That's so auntie of
media.
you, Jemele. Like,
ain't it though? I was like, get me my house coat. All right.
I'm saying your auntie robe.
In my auntie robe, exactly. You got a hella auntie robe collection.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But no, I mean, I think that was good because I wasn't constantly confronted with noise. And these kids, because when you look at some of the bullying that goes on, starting in like middle school, because they're on social media so early in their lives, that the kids now, like, it's hard for them to develop a thick skin. And I get it, because for them, Facebook and Twitter and Snap and Instagram story, like, that's their version of the street corner. Like, we just had to block, that was it. And it might be, you might just get clowned in your 1 block radius or a couple cats at school. Nowadays, you do something, it might be an entire district clowning you, or a whole city, or even if something goes national. So they have a different sense of social media. Like, I could take social media with a grain of salt. I mean, these people don't even know me, but they take it seriously. And so because of that, I think that my skin is just like a little different. Like, I didn't grow up on Facebook and I didn't grow up on Twitter. So I'm like, I don't care about these people. I don't even know them. Yep. So, but they don't have, they're unable to create that same level of distance.
I actually do worry about this generation, the fact that they're creating their sense of selves on these platforms based on what everybody's saying about or to them. Related, how has journalism, how do you think it's changed over the years from when you started to now?
I mean, it's like an entirely different profession now. And I don't know if that's good or bad. And especially, it's not just journalism being changed just because of technology, because that's drastically changed the profession. It's journalism in the age of Donald Trump. And that's an entirely different thing that I've never seen in my career, where you have people in leadership positions, not just him. He deserves to be singled out in his own right, but not just him, that are willingly misinforming people. And rather than journalists, or most journalists, I would say, or journalism outlets, it's not individual journalists, it's outlets. Rather than just straight up calling these people liars and masters of chaos, it's like we're playing along. And that, to me, is just very, it's very disheartening and it's heartbreaking. And add on to that the fact that, when I was growing up, and I don't know about your people or whatever, or what your family's television consumption habits were, but watching the evening news was a thing. It was a ritual, right? And you knew what to expect when you watched any of the news, stations at 6 o'clock or whatever, and that you were just going to hear an unfiltered report about, okay, this is what happened here, there, whatever. And it was all supposed to be somewhat neutral. These days, because there's been so much, there have been so many ratings based off the fact that you can have an opinion kind of tainting the news. These days, people go specifically to news outlets looking to confirm their opinion, not to learn. And that's why you have networks like Fox who willingly traffic in what they're trafficking in, because that's not journalism. All right, I don't know what that is. It's just propaganda to me. Yeah. It's like, so they're willingly doing this, and that did not exist when I was coming up as a journalist. Certainly you had more networks that are a little more conservative, but that meant in terms of approach to storytelling. That didn't mean their wholesale value system was based off identity politics or political ideology. It was like, wait, what? I mean, there were niche publications that did it, but now it feels like so much of the news is just being filtered through a viewpoint as opposed to just giving you what is the news.
Yeah, it's and being a member of the media, it's kind of maddening, right? Because you're like,
No, it's frustrating. It's super frustrating that, especially like, I mean, again, especially now we're in midterm season, and unfortunately, the president has amped up his very dangerous nationalist, rhetoric, and it's just something as simple as him lying about the fact that they're going to push through this tax cut before midterms when Congress isn't in session.
Congress is not in session, my guy. What the hell?
So it's a lie. That means it's a lie. He's not misunderstood, because in the questions he was told, so they're not in session, so how are you going to do this? But yet when you go to CNN and you look at what we call their topic bar, it says, Trump tax cut before midterm.
Oh.
Well, so when you read topic bars, this is generally kind of a rule in television, is the idea of doing the topic bar is if the sound is totally down, what's the story and can I tell it from this bar?
Mm-hmm.
If you are somebody who doesn't have the sound up and you walk past this topic bar, you think it's actually going to happen because they haven't told you the first part of the news, which is the president lied. So they need to be able to, not just CNN, I'm not just picking on them, news outlets need to be okay and comfortable with calling leadership liars, because that's what they are. And when you start trying to soft pedal it for your viewers and get into this debate about semantics about what is a lie, then that's when you wind up becoming propaganda for misinformation.
Yeah, this actually brings me to, let's talk about what happened last year when you tweeted that Donald Trump is a white supremacist, when he refused to basically call the terrorists in Charlottesville, Virginia, what they were. Basically, it kind of flipped everything, right?
Yeah, it became quite a story, as many people know, and it certainly caught me by surprise, because I didn't think I was saying anything that had not been at the very least insinuated.
Right.
I've often just in the company of my own thoughts said, like, okay, well, what's funny is, like, I guess what I became quote unquote known for wasn't even a hot take.
Right.
Like,
it was actually fact. It was fact.
It was like, I was like, I'm sorry. I thought we had all agreed after Charlottesville, at the very least, that this is what it was. But, apparently I think a lot had to do with the fact that at the time I was representing ESPN and being on a platform like SportsCenter. This is, even though this was said on social media, it was unexpected for a lot of people. And, what people have to understand, and I constantly have to point out, is that I didn't at Donald Trump. I just was in a back and forth with somebody who was trying to rationalize and give a pass to what he said after Charlottesville. Like, a lot of people in this country were hurting and needed to be healed. And, it's hard to just reconcile with the fact that the person who has been put in charge of, basically the most powerful position, in this universe, essentially, that has been reduced to being unable to say what, at the base that white supremacists should be condemned. And so it certainly took my life in an entirely, new direction. But, I just feel like history is going to prove me right. And every day since, all he has done is...
He called himself a nationalist yesterday. He might as well say, I want to wear white sheets. Like, what you said was not a hot take to me. Basically when it blew up, right? What did you even do? Like, I don't even understand how you could, basically tell me what you did when you were like, okay, why is this going nuts?
Well, what kind of happened was the tweets got out there. Sarah Huckabee Sanders called for me to be fired. Donald Trump weighed in. And,
Wow.
At that point, it just kind of was what it was. And I wasn't even upset about it at all. I mean, I was weirdly proud of it because anybody in our business, like, you sort of live to fight City Hall and for when City Hall comes after you.
You did something right.
Yeah, I mean, and that's I said earlier in this conversation is like journalists are meant to be agitators. That's what you do. And so, no, I didn't even take that personally. I mean, the only thing that was a little disappointing for me, and I mean, I've said this internally when I was at ESPN, is that part of having a free press is that you can't allow for people in powerful positions to come after your journalist or your employee.
Yeah.
And so I felt like ESPN should have responded on my behalf in that moment. And that doesn't mean that they could not have decided to internally punish me, but at the very least, especially considering what that office represents and the power of that office, you have to draw a line in the sand and say our employees are off limits, because that's how intimidation starts. So, you know, those tweets kind of happened, and the tweet that, you know, got me suspended is when that weekend after the president had called the NFL players sons of bitches, and the response from the NFL was to have everybody lock arms, whatever that means. And you know, a lot of people were kind of getting on the players and saying, "Why you guys should stand up to, you know, the owners, and particularly Jerry Jones, who said that if any player took a knee, that he was going to cut them," which was interesting. So my thing was like, you know, ultimately the people who determine how the owners respond to this are two groups: advertisers and fans.
Yeah.
And if you are so upset about the owners being so heavy-handed with the players, then stop watching. Okay, boycotts work for a reason. All right, and that was kind of, you know, just my point of view, instead of, because I felt like the players were put in a bad position,
right?
You know, by Jerry Jones. You know, it's like you're challenging their manhood and you're lecturing them in public, and it's just not a good look. And now you don't understand that, you know, the majority of NFL is black, so these players have to go back to their communities at some point. And now you're going to make them basically be under attack by people who look like them, and so that's what I didn't exactly like about it. That was a tweet that got me, you know, that was a tweet that got me in timeout.
You got put on timeout for real.
I did, and I understood it because, look, you know, at the end of the day, despite the fact that this is sort of a noble profession and the principles it's built on, it's still a money-making one. And, you know, advertisers are a no-no. You come after advertisers, and suddenly it changes the game. And I'm not saying I would have taken the tweets back, but I understood why they suspended me. It's all good.
So what do you think you're coming out of those 2 crazy months? What was your biggest takeaway?
You know, well, there was a few things. It was, you know, sometimes, as many of us have found out, maybe not to the degree in which I did, is that, you know, sometimes emotion that if not put in proper perspective is not always the best time to go to Twitter. You know? Not always. So there's that part of it. The other part of it, too, is I think, as always, you learn who your real friends are in situations like this. And I was very humbled and just grateful that I had so much overwhelming support by people I knew, people I didn't know. It was really quite overwhelming. And that is something that will stay in my spirit forever.
Yeah, because your co-anchor, Michael Smith especially, was really like stood next and behind you in that process.
Yeah, Mike did. A lot of my coworkers at ESPN. But, you know, Mike and I, we've known each other 20 years now. And even though, and this is, you know, when people ask me, is there anything I regret about the situation? I mean, the only thing I regret is the position I put our show in, and by extension, ESPN. I know everybody didn't agree with the fact that they suspended me, but I always encourage people to keep in mind that was someplace I worked at for 12 years. A lot of equity in that place and a lot of good relationships that I built, and people who all, you know, helped to make me into the journalist that I am. And ESPN changed my life. And so there's always going to be a certain amount of loyalty that I have for them. And so for Mike, I felt bad for him because he had to answer questions about me. And he also had to answer, about the fact that, our show was already we were in a state of transition in our show. And so it just brought a different kind of scrutiny to what we were already doing. And so, I didn't want, it was unfair for people to be asking my coworkers about me and what I said and all this other stuff. And I didn't like that for them because, they don't have to answer for anything that I said. I need to answer for it.
Right.
So, it's sort of the collateral damage of the situation is what I kind of, what was tough to watch from afar as I was, in timeout.
I love that you're calling it timeout. So when you decided to leave ESPN in January 2018, why was that the right time?
Well, I left the show SportsCenter, but I didn't leave ESPN until last month.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I just left the show, and that was independent of everything that happened with Donald Trump. I mean, doing the 6 o'clock SportsCenter is an incredible job, and there's a lot of amazing icons that have held those seats, but it wasn't right for me. And especially now at a time where I wanted to have a stronger voice in the commentary lane, I just wasn't getting the same mental stimulation doing SportsCenter. And we were having some creative issues with our show. They had a vision for SportsCenter that was not really the vision that I felt like put my skill set in the best position it could be in. And so I went back to what was my first love, which is writing. And so I chose to leave SportsCenter and start working for the Undefeated, and whose entire, it's an ESPN vertical for those who aren't familiar, vertical site. And the entire point and foundation of the site is to cover sports from a race, culture, and gender standpoint. So that seemed like much more of a natural fit in things that I wanted to write about. And, after doing that for a few months, and they have a lot of journalists over there that I truly adore, it just was kind of clear that the relationship with ESPN had run its course. I was really struggling to think of what the next stage of my career at ESPN looked like. There was nothing that jumped off the page to me. Mm-hmm. And for the first time since I had, walked through the door there in 2006, everything on the outside seemed more stimulating for me than what was happening on the inside. And that was not normally the case. I mean, it's a reason why ESPN is a destination job for so many people. But I felt like, our journey had concluded. And, there will always be a lot of mutual love and respect between both of us. And it was, I know people always think it's bull when you read that something was an amicable parting, but it was. I mean, I guess that I can put it in relationship terms is that ESPN and I loved each other. We just didn't have any business being together.
Ooh, that's
anymore.
It. Yes. And The Atlantic is an amazing outlet. So when you announced that, I think people lost their minds. What are you looking to accomplish in this new role as a staff writer for them?
Well, for those who maybe aren't quite as familiar, this is the publication that gave us Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yep.
And his case for reparations still is probably one of the top 5 best pieces of journalism I've ever read. So looking at their commitment to journalism, the amazing amount of writing that's there, the editing, everything about this spoke to my journalistic spirit. This is my journalistic spirit animal, a publication like The Atlantic. And while, I'm still covering things kind of from a sports perspective, though they certainly have been overwhelmingly sending me the message, I do not have to just write about sports. I can write about whatever I want. I think it was kind of the perfect home to write about something like that. And for me, I mean, when I sat down with the editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, and Adrienne LaFrance, who's a senior editor there with Atlantic.com. We, even though I didn't know them from a can of paint, we just clicked right away, all on the same page, all with the same mission about doing good work, critical thinking. And it's just an amazing place because I'll admit it was a little intimidating when I went into the office my first day because I'm meeting with different editors, and everybody has a resume. Everybody's resume is better than the last person I met. So people are casually talking to you, not bragging, mind you, just like, oh yeah, I covered 2 or 3 presidents. I've covered foreign affairs. Oh, I covered this war. You're like, damn, really? So it's the amount of journalistic credentials in that building is just ridiculous.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to do there. I think the fact that you're allowed to be exactly the journalist that you want to be is just going to be a gift to everybody else. So, and you're also going to start hosting a podcast.
I am. I'm going to delve in your lane. That announcement will be coming soon. It'll be coming soon. I'll be a little coy about it now, but yeah, a podcast is definitely in the works. And, that's the thing that's so different about media now is that as a journalist, you're able to build your career a la carte. Mm-hmm. And I think that is extremely, helpful. And for me at this iteration in my career. So, I'm really excited about that. And I'm still sorting through some different television possibilities. And because I want people to understand I'm not retiring from television. I just am trying to figure out what makes sense for me. Because now, especially at this point in my career where I've at least gotten I've earned the right to build it this way, and for that matter, to be very picky about who I align myself with, that I'm just taking my time and really, trying to figure out what is the best, place for me to be. And I also want to make sure that I maintain a certain degree of independence.
Is there a book coming? Because I'm ready for a Jemele Hill book, girl.
There could be a book coming. I've been working on a book proposal for a minute now. Yes. My life is kind of in Crazyville right now, but I still want to try to definitely do that. So we'll see. Hopefully, I can get this proposal off sooner rather than later. But I'm definitely going to be jumping into that arena as well.
So you posted a tweet today. Is when you became a free agent, I looked at it as free agency. When you announced that you were leaving ESPN, I'm sure your inbox blew up. So today you actually posted on Twitter, up answering emails, and God truly just put a message on my heart. Say no today more than you say yes. As women, we get in this mind frame of trying to do everything and please everybody. Well, today is not the day. This concludes my TED Talk, which I actually want to see as a TED Talk. So I'm sure all types of things are being dropped at your feet. How are you deciding what to say yes and how to say no? Because I'm sure you've said some really hard and amazing no's.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. This is the thing I think you have to watch saying no to. At least, about, manage yourself. To me, it's not about the big stuff. The big stuff is sort of you have that figured out. The thing that we don't realize each at our time, kind of like death by 1,000 paper cuts, are the little requests where, somebody's like, hey, can you give me 15 minutes to do this? Or can you just take this real quick? Can you just, enough of those come in, and next thing you know, your whole day is gone.
Yep.
With little, quote unquote, little requests, these little bits of your time that people want you to spend. So what I look at now when people ask me to do things, I don't look at just what it takes me to execute that particular task. Mm-hmm. I also look at how much time is it going to take me to think about this? How much time is it going to take me to get to this, to travel to this, to what am I not doing if I decide to do this?
Yes.
For example, somebody asked me to video a 5-minute, or not even 5 minutes, but a 2-minute shout out to somebody about some new venture that they were starting. Seems like a small request because in your mind you would just think, oh, just 2 minutes. No, then it's, okay, it's 2 minutes to actually do it. May not do it right the first time, so that might be a number of times. So that process alone, just recording it, might take me 15 minutes.
Yep.
Then it's, what am I going to say? Then it's, okay, well, how do they want it done? Then it might include a phone call to make sure I'm clear about the mission. So that 2 minutes actually becomes 30 to 45 real fast.
Yep.
And so I have tried to do a better job of saying no, frankly, to the small tasks that can kind of get me off track throughout the course of a given day.
Oh, that's really helpful. I have a list of 5 questions that I ask myself before I say yes to anything, but the small tasks also do take a lot. Now, I always ask my guests, what do you do to take care of yourself? What is your self-care thing as you are world dominating, truth telling, and doing the dope stuff?
Probably my guilty pleasure is I watch Young and the Restless.
Wait. Okay, Jemele, you're a legit peak auntie. Seriously?
Oh, am I?
Wait, I didn't even know it still came on. What channel is that on?
It's on CBS, and I DVR it every day.
Stop it.
So, yes, I DVR it every day. And so a lot of times when I write or when I'm just trying to take a mental time out and just like not think about anything, because when you're a highly motivated, high achiever, A-type personality, what happens is your mind never shuts off. And you're thinking about either the next things you have to do, things you got to do at the end of the week. Okay, how am I going to do this today? How am I going to do that? I need to call this person. I need to get this together. I need to do that. Like, mine will keep going in the most frantic circle possible. So, Young and the Restless, when, I get to find out whose baby it really is and find out who killed who, that such and such slept with so-and-so's daughter. Like, I'm sitting there, like, not even thinking about it, like, ooh, drama, so... Yeah, I watch Young and the Restless. Like, I don't watch it every day. That's why I DVR it. So I tend to binge it.
Okay.
So if I get to the end of the week and I have like 10 episodes, I'm running through them joints and not like leaving the couch at all.
Okay, so you watching, that is hilarious. I didn't even know soap opera still came on. CBS is holding on tight. Yes.
Hey, it's still the number 1 ranked soap. It's been number 1 for like 30 years.
Wow, okay.
And yes, I hate that I know that.
Yo, you're actually a legit fan. All right, what else are you doing?
So beyond the Young and the Restless being a part of my mental health routine, if you will, I do find, that there's just great pleasure for me in reading things that I know nothing about and people I know nothing about. A lot of times we gravitate towards subjects we, want to know more about, of course, and people we already know about and we're immensely fascinated and want to know more. Me and my boyfriend, we started our couples book club, as in just us. Like, so we try to read a book. We try to read a book a month, and we take turns picking the book. And that's really good because what he's interested in is not necessarily what I would be interested in. Like, the last book we read was Phil Knight's Shoe Dog. And even though Phil Knight, founder of Nike, is very known in the sports world, I can't say had he not suggested this book, I would have been that interested in really reading a book about Phil Knight. But it was fascinating. The origin story of Nike was very fascinating. So reading is also another thing that relaxes my mind. And it's, I think the moment you stop being curious is the moment that, you really have decided that, you want to be infinitely ignorant about some things. And so I just always want to be the person who's striving to know more.
I love it. Anything frivolous? Because you be doing some stuff. Well, I mean, of course, Young and Restless is frivolous, but are you a massage girl? Are you a facial person? What you doing?
Nah, I'm not a facial person, a massage person. Of course I get a pedicure. I do like massages, but I'm not the person that will have the standing weekly massage. I'm the person that is like, yo, let's go to this dope spa where that can be our lives for like 3 straight days,
Yes.
But I am a travel junkie. That's the other outlet that I have.
Okay.
And, I love exploring new places, going to see, different countries. And I expect, I do much more for leisure, do way more foreign travel, because the thing that foreign travel forces you to do is disconnect from your life. Like if I go to, Nevada or Arizona. Like, I'm not really going to be as disconnected as I need to be because I'm still in the States. But when you go overseas and you're forced to, for a certain amount of time in the day, like, you're going to put down your phone. I tend to enjoy those vacations. And I mean, I go all out. I work hard and I travel hard. And so, and I'm a travel snob, so it's even better.
Ooh, you bougie about your hotels?
Woof, am I? And about, I've spent so much of my life as a sports reporter riding a coach like the mail. Not again, ma'am. Not again.
First class shorty?
all day. And now, see, once you go first class international, it's really a wrap.
It's a wrap.
You get them late aisle seats.
Yes.
The late aisle seats.
Yes.
It's a wrap.
Yes.
You'll never go back.
Because economy sounds like you just like, that is the struggle.
Right? Isn't it though? I'm just like, oof, nah. I mean, even though the international coach flight is, riding a coach is far easier to me than coach domestic flights, because at least, in international, you get free drinks, you get some regular meal service. Like, it's good on that end. But I have no desire to be treated like the mail or the cargo. So I am going to be up in the first class with my eye mask on in my Delta pajamas. Like what?
Like what? What is the favorite country you've been to so far?
Oh, man, that's tough. I'm going to say South Africa, though. That's what immediately came to mind.
Yes.
I got to go to South Africa during the World Cup. I was there for 40 days. And
40 days?
40 days. That's the thing about covering the World Cup. It's like you're there for weeks. Weeks prepping, and sometimes people tack on time at the end. You're there for a long time. Same thing with Olympics. You're there for like 3 weeks, easy. So, but South Africa is a beautiful country. And in prep for the World Cup, I read like 3 books on South Africa and really helped me understand the culture. And, it's an interesting dynamic when you see how Black South Africans view African Americans. And you, as somebody who's of African descent, you understand this as well, is that, like, there is just such a distance because, in South Africa, I feel like BT, like, ruined all of them over there because they all think we had some Lil Wayne videos and, like, all driving Bentleys. So it's just... it was just so funny, like, constantly being asked about, especially when they find out from the States, they only conceive the States, number one, as either being LA or New York. That's it. So, like, they have no idea there's 48 other states in there. So that's the one issue. And then, and it's to be expected. And, of course, they're not as aware of our racial dynamics, much like we aren't aware of theirs. I'm old enough to have grown up with apartheid was still a real thing. And so I remember, the world basically cutting off South Africa because of apartheid. And so, at any rate, it was just hilarious because at the time, obviously she was still alive, but like I remember this one security guard in a mall in Johannesburg. He knew looking at me when I was from the States. I would never figure out how, but he was like, "Hey," he was like, "Are you from New York?" And I was like, "No, I actually live in Florida." And he was like, "Oh, okay. Is that by New York?" I was like, "No, we're close." And then he asked me if I knew Whitney Houston, and I was like,
"Wow.
Why, yes, I do. I do know Whitney Houston." I really don't know Whitney Houston, but they just think, like, literally all Black people know each other. I was like, no, we don't really know each other like that.
Like, there's a lot of us here.
It's a lot. Yeah, so it was just kind of funny. And look, God knows that when they come over to visit us, and I'm sure you've heard it too, as somebody who's Nigerian, like, all the ignorant assumptions Black Americans have about, people who have African heritage. Like, so I didn't take it personally at all. Like, when you don't know, you don't know. But it's a beautiful country, and to be there when what was one of Nelson Mandela's last public appearances, when he was there at the World Cup final, it was like really special because Nelson Mandela's dream was to bring South Africa into the age that he did. Whereas, he was a big sports fan, big into rugby, big into soccer, and he wanted South Africa before he died to have a showcase event like the World Cup so people could see how the country had changed and to see that it was no longer the country of apartheid, that there was a new vision and a new sense of hope that was there. And so I think when he died, that mission had been successfully accomplished because the country put on an amazing spectacle. South Africa is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been.
I love travel because it literally expands your world. You come back from a different country like, oh, okay, I'm definitely a slightly different person because of what you learn about what's happening there. And a lot of times I find that travel brings me closer to home because I always feel or see a piece of home wherever I go.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, and it makes you appreciate certain things, have gained a broader perspective. And I think it just, this is, I have to say this to my mother who worries about me traveling all the time unnecessarily. And as I like to remind her, and I think Americans in general, we have this very inflated sense of just how good we have it. And by that, I mean this is we do a very awful job and a purposeful job of depicting every place else like it's so much worse than it is here. And there's certainly corners of this world where it's bad, period, no matter where you are. But as I told my mother, if I told somebody who was, let's just say South Africa, to go to Chicago, what would I say? And I'm not picking on Chicago because that's your time, because that's your place. But Chicago, like my city, Detroit, has a significant murder problem, right?
Yeah.
But yet, if you ask people here in the States about going overseas, they act like you going into a combat zone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hold on, before we throwing rocks at other places, okay?
Right.
Let's look at what we got going on here.
Real.
And yeah, I mean, America is basically the most violent nation in the world, all right?
Mm-hmm.
But we quick to tell somebody else about how violent their country is and to act all appalled and offended if something violent happens in another country when they look at our murder rates and rates of violence and shootings and gun usage here, and people overseas think this place is a kill zone.
Yeah.
And so and that's something I think that travel allows you to do, is that you see other places that are living simpler lives to some degree and just don't have the level of anxiety that we have here in the States because of work, because of, they're just not as stressed. And that is one of the other many reasons why I love going overseas, is to sort of recenter myself. And
that is the ultimate type of self-care in terms of getting yourself back to where you want to be. So, yes, thank you so much for being on Rants, Jemele. This has been awesome.
I appreciate it. And this has been a true treat for me. I mean, as I said, I've been a fan of your podcast for a while and just a fan of you. And, I keep this in mind as well, is that you never know who you're inspiring from afar. And so do know that there's a lot of people that you inspire. Look, anytime you put on your headscarf and your auntie robe, I feel a new sense, a new superpower coming to fruition.
Listen, I want us to relax more, okay? That's why I'm over here like, look, y'all gonna catch these couch vibes real quick. So, no.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm like, we hustle way much. We always on the grind. People see us on stages. Can they see us in our bonnet so they know it's real?
You know what I'm saying? Because that's an intimate relationship you build in there. When they see you in your bonnet, that's when you in your true naked. I'm doing this for Harriet Sojourner, Shirley Chisholm truth.
And I feel like I need to send you an auntie robe, because I really feel like you need a proper auntie robe to live your best life.
I so need one.
So I am going to send you an auntie robe. So.
And I will wear it with pride and put it all over the gram.
Listen,
like,
it's going down. I'm texting you.
Auntie.
It's going down. We doing this. We're spreading the auntie robe revolution. Thank you so much. And people who follow you, I want everybody to follow Jemele on social. You already are anyway. People who listen to Rants, we have similar audiences. Y'all already following Jemele, but refollow her if you ain't, okay?
I appreciate it. Thank you, Larry.
All right, thanks, Jemele. Bye.
Bye.
Yo, shout out to Jemele Hill for joining me. Y'all, please follow her on social media. Her social is Lituation. She is at Jemele Hill on Twitter and Instagram. That is JemelehIll. Much love to Chicago Recording Company for partnering with me on this podcast. And subscribe to Rants and Randomness on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever you prefer to get it. Please rate the podcast too and review it. I love your reviews. If you leave a comment, you just might be featured on this show. Follow the podcast on social media. Twitter at Rants Randomness, no and. On Instagram, Rants and Randomness. And, when you're listening to the podcast, go ahead and share it on Insta Stories. I love to see that. I'm going to reshare and repost the ones I see. And now I get a lot of questions in my messages, and I think a lot of them would be good to answer on this show because they're so universal. If you'd like to send me a question that will possibly be answered on the podcast, holler at me at lovierants@gmail.com. Feel free to send any love, any type of stories. I just love hearing from y'all. And as always, you can follow me on social media. I am at Luvvie everywhere on these interwebs. That's Luvvie. See you on the next episode.